what I'd like to do to start with is we're going to start at verse 70, and I'm going to start with the way of the Bodhisattva. I'm going to read, first of all, from here, probably from 70 to about 85. And then I'll go back and we'll talk about each one. And some of the commentaries. So starting at verse,
John,
yes, Rania.
There's background noise like someone putting dishes away. Do you hear that, Nick? I don't understand.
Yeah, we don't hear it from here.
Okay.
Tell her to look out in the kitchen.
Joe said to look out in the kitchen. You're muted again. So, all right. Let me start at verse 70. Now, when a building is ablaze and flames leap out from house to house, the wise course is to take and fling away the straw and anything that spreads the fire. And so, in fear that merit might be all consumed, we should at once cast away our mind's attachments, tinder for the fiery flames of hate. Is it not a happy chance if, when condemned to death, a man is freed, his hand cut off in ransom for his life? And is it not happy chance if now, to escape hell, I suffer only the misfortunes of the human state? If even these, my present pains, are now beyond my strength to bear, why do I not cast off my anger, cause of future sorrows in infernal torment? For sake of gaining all that I desired, 1,000 times I underwent the tortures of the realms of hell, achieving nothing for myself or others. The present aches are nothing to compare with those, and yet great benefits will come to them. These troubles that dispel the pain of wanderers, it's only right that I rejoice in them. When others take delight in giving praise to those endowed with talents, why, O mind, do you not find a joy likewise in praising them? The pleasure that is gained therefrom itself gives rise to blameless happiness. It's urged on us by all the holy ones and is the perfect way of winning others. But they're the ones who will have the happiness, you say. If this then is a joy you would resent, abandon paying wages and returning favors. You will be the loser, both in this life and in the next. When praise is heaped upon your qualities, you're keen that others should be pleased thereby. But when the compliment is paid to others, you feel no inclination to rejoice as well. You who want the happiness of beings have wished to be enlightened for their sake. So why should others irk you when they find some pleasure for themselves? And if you claim to wish that beings be enlightened, honored by the triple world, when petty marks of favor come their way, why are you so discomforted? When the dependents who rely on you, to whom you are obliged to give support, find for themselves the means of livelihood, will you not be happy? Will you once again be angry? If even this you do not want for beings, how could you want Buddhahood for them? And how can anyone have bodhicitta, who is angry when another prospers? If someone else receives a gift, or if that gift stays in the benefactor's house, in neither case will it be yours. So given or withheld, why is it your concern? All your merit and the faith of others, all your sterling qualities, why throw them all away? Not holding on to what might bring you riches. Tell me, why are you not angry at yourself? Not only do you feel no sorrow for the evils you have done, you even wish to match yourself with those whose merit has been created. Has been earned. So I'm not sure we'll get quite that far, but those are the verses that I'd like to cover today. Any, just on first reading, any thoughts, any comments, anything comes to mind to people? Okay. Well, let me go then. I'm going to read, this is a different translation from Pema Chodron's book. I'm going to read 70 and 71 again, and then we'll talk about those two. For when a building is ablaze and flames leap from house to house, the wise course is to take and fling away the straw and anything that spreads the fire. In fear that merit may all be consumed, we should at once cast far away our mind's attachments, tinder for the fiery flames of hate. Shantideva is telling us here how to cool our resentment, how to prevent or minimize our anger and hatred from arising. We are to remove the fuel that causes our anger to escalate, the tinder of wanting things to be our own way. Looking at our attachments, we can begin to see that they don't hold together without our internal storylines. He says that he can cool down the fiery flames of hate by seeing our attachment to our obsessive thoughts and letting them go. Pelton says that even if our friends are fighting or attacked from the outside, we should fear that the anger or hatred should contaminate our mind and destroy the merit of 1,000 kalpas. We must cast away. We must cast away at once that which we are that to which we are attached, even if that's our friends, our close associates, and so forth. Verse 672 says, is not a man relieved what? Yes.
Could we
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not comfortable just kind of going through their, I'd like to kind of insert
Please.
some sidebars to this. For when a building is ablaze, as you pointed out, is this sense of anger being one of the three poisons. And flames leap out from house to house. Here, we're kind of, my take on this is that when we become angry, it's not generally, it's kind of like a row house because we're with others. So it does spread from house to house. So this is a depiction of how it consumes us, but not just us. That this spreads, and it talks about the wise course then being to take and fling it away, the straw and anything that spreads the fire. So this sense of finding what's the root of the anger, which I think that's an important point here to make, is that it's the fuel that we're trying to address here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, coming back to what is actually going on here. What is the source of the anger? Maybe this is nothing to do with this current situation. And at a minimum, as we know from our study of interdependence, it's a very involved scenario. So just opening up that insight into the breadth of what it is that's causing the anger, its deeper roots, having that wisdom. And it talks here, it says the wise course. And the wise course is to see things more broadly. When we have a narrow view, it's kind of like funneling the anger, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's at least how I often experience it. And then it does start to build in intensity. But if we create more space, that's psychologically, I think, the way that we can begin to address it.
And I think I read this as seeing that we need to take away our own tinder so that we don't become another house on fire, that we don't become part of the blaze, and then hopefully the blaze then also settles down because we don't bring more tinder to that.
Right. For sure.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I felt
Joe.
like we were
oh,
just,
sorry.
no, I just felt like we were just kind of doing too much reading and not enough.
Okay.
Kind of what does this mean? So I'll be injecting.
Yeah, no, please.
Okay.
Please. No worries.
Okay.
Joe, you had something?
Yeah, it's one thing to say, okay, I understand what the sentence is saying, just take away the tinder. So what does that really mean? And so I can't help, again, to go back to nonviolent communication, feelings and needs. The feeling is anger. Look at that anger and see what the need is, the unfulfilled need that is boiling up in you, that's creating that anger. And that's really the space to go to try to discover what that unmet need is that you're so angry about. And that helps get at the tinder, so to speak. I don't know how many other ways there are of self-examination, getting at that tinder, whatever you want to refer to it as. But that's certainly, NVC is a very good way of handling yourself in those kinds of situations.
Yeah. Kimberly.
I think of Tinder also as like sense impressions too, and how this verse these two verses point to having maybe the wisdom to recognize what one exposes themselves in any given day, using the guidepost or the precepts as a sort of guidepost.
Mhm.
Just sort of connecting all of that. We're all so different. We all have our own different histories and everything. And there comes a point where, by self-reflection, one can fine-tune and navigate when, like, the emotional map stirs up.
Mhm.
So I think when I think of tinder in these verses and fire spread, I mean, it certainly does. Just being in a room, I just remember, being a very sensitive child, I could walk in a room and know there was an intense conversation or something that happened in that room before.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. And even too, as I sit here and I think of, taking refuge in the Sangha, especially in these times we're living in right now, to be sitting here and being nurtured by like-minded individuals studying this beautiful text. This will put out that tinder.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll bow out.
No, I think that's well said. And I think one of the things, while there's tinder that we all carry with us, there's also the individual tinder that we all have. And part of, I think, what we need to do is to look beyond the major things and look at those, what's mine, where am I at in this, I think is incredibly important. This particular one of the statements in the commentary, particularly true for me, it was where he talks about wanting to have my own way, and we can think about that, as the child wanting to have their way, but as adults, I want to have my own way too. I want to have my way that this place is fair, that everybody gets treated right, that flies in the face of the real world we live in. Those are what I want to happen, and I've got to come to terms with that as well. So that's been a particular one for me. Joe.
You just reminded me of a poem. Actually, it's the end of a song by Daniel Lanois called Fisherman's Daughter, where at the end he said, God's angry hand broke through the clouds and scattered the cargo for all to see. Fault of the sailor, fault of he who asks no questions about the cargo he is carrying.
Go ahead.
And I think again and again, Shantideva reminds us that we have the tool right in front of us, and that's Zazen. Because through Zazen, we can recognize our delusion and be awakened to our interdependence, and that is the sort of antidote preventing tinder from taking spread. So, looking at all these analogies that he's bringing in, always comes back to the tool that we have.
I'm sorry, what comes
The
back?
tool that we have, which is our sitting practice.
Indeed. Anything else? Okay. 672 says, is not a man relieved when, though condemned to death, he's freed, his hand cut off and ransomed for his life. Enduring likewise human ills, am I not happy to avoid the pains of hell? So what are we saying? Well, overall, I'd say it's better to put up with our minor annoyances than to dive into one of the poisons. Bhima comments that it takes courage to refrain from anger when we want to yell at our foes, talk indignantly about our friends, or fuel our anger with our thoughts. It is surely better to endure merely human injuries like scorn rather than suffer the pains of hell. That's what Peldon says. Peldon talks a lot about hell. I look at hell as the hell we put ourselves into when we stay stuck in our anger. It's probably the one thing that I've been more aware of as well with everything that's going on in our world today. And that is, I see my anger pointing at outward, and I don't like what it looks like. But how often do I look at what that same anger does to me? And that's what I've been trying to understand. I think, Chris, the saying comes from the recovering community about, I don't think they use the word hatred, but I will use the word hatred. Hatred is like taking poison and expecting someone else to die. I think that comes from the recovering community. It's not, the word isn't hatred they use, but it may be resentment or something like that.
Yeah, I think
But
I got it from somewhere else as well. It might even be Buddhist.
Yeah.
Buddhist teaching, I think, from the Dhammapada, I think maybe it's a Buddha quote. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they kind of adapted. Yeah.
That's, for me, that's even recently especially become the bigger question I have. What is this anger doing to me? Day to day, minute to minute. And I would certainly encourage you all to take a look at that too. Any other thoughts about this?
I just had one thought, again, going back to, my background as a therapist and all that, that a lot of anger is something that's occurred already, like in our childhood, for example, or some trauma that we've experienced. So for many people, the way that that gets expressed is that something small can trigger a much larger response. And, sometimes people don't even know where that's coming from. They don't attach it necessarily to, the trauma that they experience. So, for some folks, introspection is a great tool, and but sometimes people need more help, and that more help comes from being in therapy, for example.
Indeed.
So, and I think going back to Glenn's comment about Zazen, a lot of times traumatic memories come up for people in the process of doing Zazen. So if that's happening a lot, that could be a clue to where the anger comes from, and also a clue about how to work with it.
Yeah, I agree totally. John.
So I'm trying to take this to its logical conclusion or flesh out this analogy. So let's say we live in an unfair world. We can all agree that. And we go through some judicial process and we lose this limb, say, and it's an unfair process. Whatever we were accused of was not true. I can internally be grateful that I'm left with a working body otherwise. But how do I show that gratitude to the world? Am I supposed to say I'm grateful to the unfair system, that it didn't bring the hammer down and crush my skull? I have a hard time saying to the world, like, yes, this is fair, while I can say internally, I can have gratitude for the situation.
Okay. First of all, when I read I read it a bit different. I read it as someone who is condemned to death for something they did, that they knew, and that they are therefore relieved that they're not condemned to death. That they're, I gather, either something I read or somewhere that at times you could, that was a thing of mercy where, all right, we won't kill you, we'll just cut your arm off. So, but nonetheless, even if that were true, I think every time you went to use that hand, you would have other thoughts, I think. I don't know. But you'd still be grateful you weren't dead, I think. What do you say at that point? I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but it was how so I read the verse a bit different than that, but that this was, if it's unfair, if the whole thing is unfair, as God knows, we know happens not infrequently. What do you do then? How do you look at the times that you've been unfair? Do you look at the times that, number one, as I regularly used to have to tell many of my clients, I'm sure Chris did too, life's not fair. And that makes us angry. Makes me angry, I know. Responding with skillful means at that moment, I think, can be a lot of different things depending on the exact situation and who you are. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, I would say though that I take the phrase about being condemned to death in a different way. When I read that, it's like, well, we're all condemned to death, so that makes it personal, and then it becomes kind of interesting how we deal with that. That's to a large degree what religion's all about. Is we're all condemned to death. So what are we going to do? What kind of theology are we going to create to address that? So from that perspective, then, though condemned to death, becoming freed, kind of this Buddhist sense of the great matter of life and death, and that our liberation is found in that crucible. That's being freed for Buddhism and for a lot of other religions as well, I think. And then what's part of that equation? The hand cut off in ransom for his life, the things we're attached to. So certain things we let go of. Or as Zen practitioners, this sense of no attachments, kind of.
Yeah.
And then enduring likewise merely human ills. So again, kind of creating this more spacious view that arises when we let go of ourself. And it's through that letting go of ourself that the whole matter of birth and death starts to drop off. The whole process, shunyata, interdependence. And all of a sudden, we don't feel like we're condemned to death. Thursday night's talk, we can see jewels even in this process of birth and death. This changing of the seasons. Great beauty there.
No other place you can see jewels anyhow.
Yeah. So, am I not happy to avoid the pains of hell? To see that as just the relieving of suffering, which is, we come back to the root teaching of Buddhism from the very get-go. That's where it all begins, to avoid the pains of hell. Until we've done that, we can't really get anywhere on the path. So it's appropriate that is kind of the starting point. Realize this house is on fire. What do I do? And once we address that, then now we can begin to see the jewels all around.
.673 says, if pains of even this, my personal life, my present life, are now beyond my strength to bear, why do I not overthrow my anger? Cause of future sorrows in infernal torment. The commentary says, if we're unable to tolerate pain inflicted on us and our friends by our enemies, we need to realize how much greater that pain of losing ourselves in our anger or rage. We must take responsibility for our actions and accept the short-term, relatively mild suffering rather than the greater pain of immersing ourselves in one of the poisons. Our future well-being depends on what we do here and now. Again, going back to this idea of what we do, that our present life is going to have pains and troubles and tribulations, and learning to manage those, learning to bear those and use the precepts and the paramitas is a way to get rid of our anger rather than to just be further immersed in that anger and to be poisoned by it. Any thoughts? The next two, 674 and 675, go together. For the sake of gaining all that I desired, 1,000 times I underwent the tortures of the realms of hell, achieving nothing for myself and others. The present aches are nothing to compare with those, and yet great benefits may come from them. These troubles that dispel the pains of wanderers, how could I not rejoice in them? Our attachments, be they physical or be they relational, can cause us a great deal of pain. Pelton says at this point that in all of this, nothing was gained for ourselves or others. Pema Chodron agrees, but she adds that we build even stronger habits of striving, craving, hatred, and revenge when we stay in the realm of attachment. We stay with the poisons. It points to the possibility of doing something different, working straightforwardly. With the mind, rather than trying to pursue happiness in the ordinary samsaric ways. She reminds us that human suffering has value. It can teach us compassion and humility. She says that the pain of changing old habits should not just be tolerated, we should celebrate it. Yeah.
That's where gratitude comes in.
Yep.
Those teaching moments, right? The adversaries, these situations are contributing to our anger and our ability to respond to anger, whether we feed it or we practice skillful means, right speech, and not feed the anger. Those are moments when we should be grateful for these opportunities to practice and to recognize our ability to let go of those. So the unfairness of the world, someone who's just cut us off in traffic, a difficult situation that you don't want to deal with, right? It's not like we're automatically joyful when those happen. Right? Like, I would prefer not to have those happen, but since they are, let's be grateful that they are happening, that we are encountering those people, those situations, because it reminds us.
Dharma gates
Yeah.
are boundless.
Yeah, learning to be grateful for those opportunities is a work in progress, I think, for all of us all the time. I would be lying. I'm sure this will shock you, but I would be lying if I said I always feel grateful for those things when they come up. But it is certainly what we need to do. It's certainly what we need to strive for. Let's put it that way.
I was just going to comment that it's certainly a different way of looking at it. Most people, when some misfortune happens, are upset about it, and it's unfair, poor me, all these things. So seeing these things as an opportunity for growth or as a dharma gate is a different shift in perspective. So just the whole idea that we can learn from almost anything that happens in our lives. And not just positive things, like being here and, great Dharma talks and so forth, but from adversity. So it's a shift in how we look at things. And it helps, rather than pushing it away, we can embrace it a little easier. If it's like, oh, I can learn something from this. What's the lesson in this,
Yeah, I think it's the idea of either you've got to not respond, as that isn't necessarily skillful means. We really we need to look at what response is called for in any given situation. So, Joe.
Similar to what we were just talking about the other night about the Diamond Sutra, to see the jewel, to see the gift in things.
Mm-hmm. They're there. We just don't always see them.
One comment about the line that starts verse 75, the present aches are nothing to compare with those. I immediately think about doing longer practice periods and just practice of zazen. Why do we do that? Because there are aches, literally, that kind of result from it. And yet, because of those, we are actually able to have a sense of liberation. But,
True.
Yeah.
Few hours of zazen remind us about the aches and pains. At this point, Pema Chodron reminds us that the teachings in this sutra are Shantideva's instructions to himself, and says that verses 76 to 86, he sort of gives himself a pep talk for developing patience when our enemies are praised and we are not. It can be hard to see others get compliments, a job, perks, or even a lover that we wanted. Shantideva asks us why we cannot find joy when the talents of others are being praised. She asks us to change the narrative and rejoice in the good fortune of others, saying, I'm happy for them, and if it were me, I would want them to be happy for me. Pema then says, when the undertow of anger and resentment is pulling me under, teaching myself the Dharma like this is sometimes the only thing that saves me from drowning. I thought that was a very powerful statement about, and I think we've all had that anger that can take us to that point of feeling overwhelmed by what we're feeling, what we're seeing. So, going to 676, it says, when others take delight in giving praise to those endowed with talents, why, O mind, do you not find a joy likewise in praising them? And then she adds 677 to this, the pleasure that you gain therefrom itself gives rise to stainless happiness. It's urged on us by all the holy ones in his perfect way of winning others. Both of the commentaries then go on to talk about what that means, that patience is stainless, it brings happiness, is praised by the holy ones, and is a perfect way to help others. And then they explain that oftentimes when we have happiness, it isn't stainless. And what they mean by that is, whether intentionally or not, our gain is someone else's loss. It may be malicious or it may not be in any way our fault. We get a job, we win a competition that someone else doesn't. Even though not purposeful, our happiness in these cases is subtly stained. The practice, they then go on to say that the practice of patience is stainless, meaning that everyone gains. When we are patient, we gain, and so does the other person. Though not always immediate pleasure, the practice of patience brings happiness, whether it's the relief of lessening our rage or just being able to stop and relax rather than retaliating in kind. It gradually increases our well-being. We are less often provoked by people or things, which lead to the world being a friendlier place for everyone. Being praised by the holy ones is the third joy. And ultimately, this just means that it brings us closer to our basic goodness, to our Buddha nature. And lastly, it allows us to communicate with people in a way more likely to be heard when others don't feel threatened or accused, making it a perfect way to help people. So those are the 4 things that they talk about, and of why and how patience is an important action for us to take. Yeah.
I also am looking at this from the idea of a zero-sum game,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is a product of capitalism
Mm-hmm.
and the model of scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
I think our vow to save all beings and the realization that the jewels are boundless and they're all there at all times. There's no reason why everyone and every being shouldn't be showered with joy. There's no reason for that. But capitalism overlays this construct of scarcity on us where we are pitted against each other in competition. And so, like for instance, I applied for this Ohio Creative Arts grant. Didn't get it. And then saw the announcement of who did win, and a couple of my acquaintances won the grant, and I was like, oh my God, that's great. And if I was 10 years younger, 20 years younger, I would have been so bent out of shape. Like, why did they get the grant? These people win all the awards, and they continue to win the same, the same people continue. So getting caught up in that like endless just chain of resentment and anger, there's no reason for that, right? There's, the jewels of joy are there for everyone. And when we take our vow to liberate all beings from suffering, right? It's for every being, right? In all situations. And it's like we've got to remind ourselves that it's not a zero-sum game, and that someone having success or happiness does not mean that I do not get success or happiness as a result.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's like this this ever-present ocean that we're swimming in, right? Fish don't understand that they're in the ocean because it's so pervasive. Capitalism and this neoliberal sort of construct is so ingrained in us and surrounds us that it's hard for us to step away from that and to realize that that's just the situation we're living in. It's not the reality.
I think this is, you are right on with that. This is definitely about zero-sum game. And one of the things that I've said for a long, long time since I came back from the Peace Corps was, if I was ever had to be poor, I mean really poor, I would much rather be really poor in a poorer country. Because when I was in the Peace Corps, at least, and I'm sure this has changed with the advent of the internet and so forth, but it became clear to me how much in this country what you don't have is in your face every single day, and you're being told you have to have it, you need it. Whereas the town that I lived in Iran, for instance, there were some very wealthy people in that town, including the one of the main cabinet ministers was from that town, had, I'm sure, a wonderful, beautiful mansion. You didn't see it. All of the houses were surrounded by walls. Now that went back to because tribes used to come in and raid them, so they needed to have walls around them. But the upshot of it was, it wasn't in your face. You knew that they were wealthy, you could see that, but that was them, and you had your life, and people around you were like you. It was a very, very different concept. It was a very, very different feeling. And I think, I agree with you. I think the what we do here and what capitalism is, unfortunately, and I don't think it has to be capitalism in and of itself, but the way it's practiced here, it certainly is a poison. It is unchained greed, basically. So it can't be anything else. I'll keep that as my. But anything else? $678 says, but they're the ones who will have the happiness, you say. If this then is a joy you would resent, abandon paying wages and returning favors. You will be the loser, both in this life and in the next. This comes back to zero-sum gain. Samsaric reasoning would say that someone else will get all the happiness and not me. Shantideva is saying that if we refrain from praising others because they will get the happiness and contentment, why would you pay wages or return favors which contribute to others' happiness? Not praising others, including our enemies, simply increases our jealousy and meanness and brings us no happiness. Sort of, not just sort of, essentially descending into the poison, going into that resentment. Anything to add to that, or any other thoughts? In 680 then, I'm sorry, where am I here? Sorry. 679, I believe. When praise is heaped upon our merits, you're keen that others should rejoice in them. But when compliment is paid to others, your joy is oh so slow and grudging. I thought this was certainly true, and that is, Pema Chodron says here that that the last two lines are predictable human behavior, and that people almost anywhere in the world would recognize them. We resent it when others are praised instead of us. And Shantideva is also reminding us that this doesn't bring happiness to anyone, not to you or to them.
This is exactly echoing what Glenn had taught
Yes.
in terms of the word of the grant.
Yeah.
And it's also pointing to one of the Brahma Viharas, the divine writings, sympathetic joy. Sympathetic joy meaning that you rejoice in the joy of others. And that's ranked right up there with compassion, loving kindness, equanimity.
Yeah.
So it's a nice way of reminding ourselves that what's being portrayed here is a really key element of living an awakened life. To have this sense of sympathetic joy, sharing the joy of others. The logic behind it's pretty clear. I mean, if I can share the joy of others, my joy is greatly enhanced.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to what Pema Chodron said earlier on, too, of the idea that, I would like others to be happy for my successes. Why wouldn't I be for theirs? Sure.
I think this whole section should be copied and taken to Washington.
And we burn it. This is heresy.
Fake news.
Yeah.
Right.
And they'd burn us. Anything else? 680 then. You who want the happiness of beings have wished to be enlightened for their sake. So why should others irk you when they find some little pleasure for themselves? And 681, if you truly wish that beings be enlightened, venerated by the triple world, when petty marks of favor come their way, why, oh why, are you in torment? So more of the same. It's ironic that the Bodhisattva vow is cultivating an attitude of mind that is oriented towards enlightenment and wishing to gain Buddhahood for the infinite multitude of beings, and at the same time to be irritated by the most by people or things which lead to the world being. Wait. Sorry about that. Let's change pages. It'll make a lot more sense. I'm going to read that sentence again. It is ironic to take the Bodhisattva vows, culminating in cultivating an attitude of mind that is oriented towards enlightenment and wishing to gain Buddhahood for the infinite multitude of beings, and at the same time to be irritated by the most trivial interaction. Pima comments that we would rather travel around the world to help homeless orphans than to deal with our mother or spouse. What Shantideva is saying here is that we should work wholeheartedly with our everyday obstructions. The old saying of the obstacle is the way.
What I would say is this is pointing to the difference between doctrine and practice, and that this is practice. That's, to me, that's exactly what's being pointed to here. We can have the doctrine, have the vows as an idea in our head, and of course everybody's going to sign into it.
Yeah.
Say, these are beautiful vows, but that's just a guidepost to the practice, and the practice is the way. 682 then says, when dependents who rely on you, to whom you are obliged to give support, find themselves the means of livelihood, will you not be happy? Will you once again be angry? Again, he's asking himself these questions. If someone's depending on you and they find their source of livelihood, we'd be happy. It wouldn't make any sense to be upset. So the interesting comment they make, so if a few sentient beings are saving us the trouble on the Bodhisattva path by finding some happiness for themselves, even if it's finding happiness in compliments that we don't feel they deserve, why should we be upset? I thought that was that certainly isn't necessarily how we think about it. When we are thinking about someone getting something that we don't think they deserve. But here they're saying it's a little bit of happiness for them. Why are you upset about it? As a bodhisattva, that's what you want to bring to people. And so they're helping you out, even if it doesn't feel that way.
My father must have been a bodhisattva.
Didn't hear that.
He was very happy for me to go out and fend for myself.
He then says, 683, if even you do not want for beings, how could you want Buddhahood for them? And how could anyone have bodhicitta and resent the good that others have? This one hit me very directly as I read it, and probably as much because I'm struggling with some of the same things. But knowing that Shantideva is addressing this to himself, when I first read this, I could hear him saying to himself, so, do you think you want to be a bodhisattva? This is where the rubber meets the road. Do you really aspire to this practice? Is it what you vow? Pima reminds us here that there is no practice more important than relating honestly and sanely with the irritations that plague us in everyday life, and reminds us that both justifying our resentment and or feeling guilty about it both stifle a bodhi heart. again, she returns to this idea of, it's right here, it's right now. We'd like to go, we'd like to go take care of orphans overseas or someplace else, as opposed to dealing with the people right in our life that give us the most cause for irritation, or that we have the most problem with in one way or another. I found her comment at the end feeling both of these things, saying that both of these things are not helpful. That whether we justify our resentment or whether we feel guilty about it, that in either case, those are not helpful for us. So, any comments? Okay. Six 84 and 685 kind of go together. If someone else receives a gift, or if that gift stays in the benefactor's house, in neither case will it be yours. So given or withheld, why is it your concern? Tell me, why don't you resent yourself? You who throw your merit, faith, and all your qualities so far away, why do you not cultivate the cause of riches? Sort of two things. The one sort of straightforward. He says, if someone else gets a gift and you feel resentful of it, why? You're not getting it either way. But either it's not going to be given or it's going to be given to someone else. It's not your concern. Yeah, and we can instead acknowledge the way that our mind keeps reacting causes us problems. When others receive rewards that we don't feel they deserve, we can let it destroy our peace of mind or choose to let it go. I feel like this is certainly more of the same. We can be angry, we can be resentful, we can be envious, and all of those feelings are normal human feelings. But then we can either immerse ourselves in the feelings, or we can look for skillful means, or at least to understand what's going on inside of us. That's 686. All the evil you have done, you cheerfully neglect to purify, and do you further wish to match yourself to others who have earned their merit? This seems to be a bit about what you were talking about, Glenn, before. That we can resent people and for getting things we don't. Shantideva asked us why we rant about others' good fortune, neglecting our own unrepented negative actions, and ignoring the fact that maybe it was because of their previous virtuous actions that these good things are happening to them. And then at the end, she says, nothing positive will come to us if we gossip or continue to be resentful.
I think there's a little flip side to this. Is yes, there are lots of instances when other people gain successes and good things happen to them because they have been virtuous. We should feel grateful for them as well. But there are also instances when people do succeed through no effort of their own. We call it failing upward, right? My wife is dealing with this in the nonprofit world where there are people in positions of authority who are actively, unskillfully doing what they do and causing harm to others in the organization. And so those people have succeeded or have gained positions of authority not necessarily through their own virtuous deeds, but through other reasons. And so again, those present opportunities, not necessarily for resentment, even though resentment would be very easy in those situations.
Well, you'll feel it regardless.
Yeah, where you're dealing with someone in a position of authority or like this current administration we're in, right? Where the unskillful means seem to be the point, right? Punishment and cruelty are the point. And so when we're faced with those kinds of situations and those kind of people, it stretches that expectation of us to be grateful and to rejoice in their success, because that's a big stretch. So struggling with that in terms of, yes, we can feel grateful for that Dharma gate, but our sense of justice and fairness is not being met. So we have to come to terms with that in some way. So I don't necessarily have an answer to that. My wife comes home from work and she's just exasperated at this lack of skillful means in right speech that she's encountering on a daily basis. I struggle to provide good comfort for her, because sometimes it just happens. It just we have to figure out how to use our own skillful means to navigate those situations.
Well, and I think there are lots of things in life that are that way. I mean, I think we all come upon those things where we're dealing with someone who's being totally unskillful, probably shouldn't be where they're at, and yet, and let me say it, one more thing, finding a gift in all of that can be really hard.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, the gift may be the skillful means of how are you going to deal with this, which the skillful means in that case, and I'm not talking about backstabbing with someone, but working towards replacing them as that in ways that are appropriate. A lot of times that's beyond anything you can manage. And then the skillful means come to how you're going to deal with that person. Because you need those skillful means too.
It also tests us in terms of our interdependence. And, the delusion that we are separate, that person is that way and we are this way. And it's like, well, that's just a reflection of us as well. So
Sure.
that's also a little hard to navigate.
Yeah.
Sometimes the vows are okay. Sometimes you have to work harder to honor the vows than other times.
They're not easy.
Yeah.
It's true. They definitely aren't oftentimes. Yeah, Kimberly.
I don't think you need to be grateful to these people. I apologize. My book is packed up in a box it's just packed up for a while. But could you please repeat the last line
Of
that we're actually talking about right
Yeah,
now?
yeah.
Not only do you feel no sorrow.
Yeah, the line as I read it to you out of Pima's book is
Oh, you have Pima's, okay.
Actually the two lines go together. And do you further wish to match yourself to others who have earned their merit?
Ah. Match yourself with those. This Shantideva, the way the Bodhisattva, the other version, slightly different. You even wish to match yourself with those whose merit has been earned. Not only do you feel no sorrow for the evils you have done. Wow. I think it's just, when I think of grateful, I think all this in context, as you've said a lot during our session today, is that the reminder that Shantideva is writing this to himself.
Mm-hmm.
In his own, he's going inside to evaluate his own understanding of the practice and his outward, the way he navigates life. And so in that sense, there's always all this injustice all around, then as now. And the practice points to, very simply, how it's like being grateful. I guess you could say, okay, being grateful, I'm putting in quotes here, to just how to respond. And sometimes the best response is to not respond in any given situation. But to be grateful because someone got a position, for an example, to be grateful for someone got this great position, but you and everyone around you knows in an unspoken way that they got it by unskillful means. That's not something to be grateful for.
The question I'd ask you is, do you really know that?
Do I really know that?
You're
I'm sorry, I'm going
what?
in
No,
I'm
no.
getting too abstract.
No, No, I'm coming to a point here that
Okay.
that does, I think, affect us all, and that is we make assumptions that we know what's going on oftentimes,
That's very true.
and we may or may not know the whole story. We may assume, oh yeah, well he's friends, so that's how he got this position, and I've never seen anything that he's smart enough to do this. You know, he got this position because he's Joe's friend.
Right.
No offense, Joe, but
I guess my mind is just going to like the big, I mean, just this big, here we are, you know, in our own government, like sitting here, and I mean, there's just blatant facts, just, it's all around us.
what
And yet I know there's a lot of skewing, and it's all the smoke and mirrors going on at the same time.
well, one of the things that Dean and I talked about a long time
No
ago
one's
that
agreeing what's reality anymore. How do you feel grateful in this situation?
well,
Shantideva.
I feel grateful because I know what's right. No, I mean, I think coming back to, for me, it is always coming back to, I know what don't I know? And I was about to say, one of the things that Dean and I talked about a long time ago that is a simple idea that really kind of made me think about a lot of what's going on in this country is this is our karma. This is this country's karma.
Mhm.
We are here because of all of us. And it's more complicated than we think it is. That's the one thing I would say to that. It's the one thing that I do, not always successfully, but try to remind myself is there are things I know and things I don't. I'm, you know, we can give you an example. Donald Trump causes me a great deal of discomfort. Let me say it that way. But one of the things that I've come to realize and believe is he's not the one running all of this. There's somebody that's a whole lot more organized and has a whole lot more ideas. And this is some other group of people back there too. Do I know that? Nope, I don't know that. Do I suspect it? Yeah, strongly. But I don't know that. And you know, so I have to put those things, I have to balance those things out. What do I really know? What do I not know? If this is bad, what is the skillful means that I can use to help out? Is that, you know, going to protests? Is that going to whatever those skillful means are? That's my response. And some of my gratitude is having those ways to respond. I can always be grateful for a country to a point where we still have some freedom of speech, at least. But doesn't mean I'm happy about everything else going on.
Thank you.
Randy, you're muted.
One thing I think in the vein that you are speaking about is when you look into the history of our country and all the horrific things have happened since Europe first got here, is amazing. And we are a result of that. And I think it helps that group. I've brought them up before, Braver Angels. Taking that opportunity to talk to people on the other side, I think helps with compassion. To talk, when the blue and the red get together, and there's meetings every month in Brecksville, Braver Angels, and getting the opportunity to hear the other side, but also to express and get help in expressing in a skillful mean how you feel, is one way, I think, of disseminating the anger.
Mhm.
So that's all.
No, I think it's a wonderful suggestion, and one I certainly would recommend to anybody who has interest in doing that. Hopefully that's something I can check out in a few weeks here, but not soon. Anything else?
One thing I feel I should bring up before we close things out is to keep in mind that patience is not acquiescence, because they're close. but patience, to use definition of Zazen that Reb Anderson has used in the past, that it's meeting each thing that arises with relaxation. Kind of relates, to my mind, with patience. It's meeting each thing that arises with relaxation. So if we have kind of an emotional response, we don't just continue on in that vein. But as Ben might say, or Busho Lan, the last two authors we've studied, just breathe in, breathe out. It can be that basic. Just stop. And to a considerable degree, that's patience, is stop.
This is stopping.
Something Busho, I know, brought up often in his book on the Song of Zazen, this notion of just being present, being with.
Mm-hmm.
But still, the purpose of that is ultimately to be responsive, which is why I say it's not acquiescent, but it improves tremendously the quality of the response, which speaks to the skillful means. We're more apt to be able to use skillful means,
yes,
as opposed to just the knee-jerk response. That's what results from patience.
yes.
We need to be able to respond. And the fact that patience is one of the paramitas, but it also ties in with the others. To recognize that.
I had a thought a few talks ago about how patience can be looked at as a form of forgiveness. So we're driving, you cut me off, and I want to go, but I go, I forgive you for doing that, and that can help soothe maybe that urge to react. Just go, no, this is an opportunity to rise and say, because back when I had my loud voice and I was younger, I was very impatient, very reactive, very ragey. So that's my silver lining of this is I can't yell anymore.
Get a megaphone.
it's a mandatory workaround. But just putting those two words in the same pool of patience and forgiveness, because you always make a choice. Who am I? Am I God? I'm gonna go, no, F you for cutting me off. Or just, think about, maybe it's a woman in labor, or maybe someone just got a call that their loved one collapsed. Like, we don't know.
Yeah.
We're not. And that comes back to what you were saying too. Like, do you know? Like, we know what we think, but how egocentric are we to the point of saying, everything I think is the be all and end all? It's not. But also back to the very beginning of the burning fire, and so Dean cuts me off, and I go, oh, and then I'm in a bad mood now. Now I'm going to be less able to skillfully coexist with whoever I see next, and then it just builds and builds, or it doesn't, and that's like a quiet ripple of just peacefulness, I guess.
Glad you forgive Dean.
Yeah,
I really. Gratitude spreads.
Again, that just the concept that everything can resonate, does resonate. And so are you gonna give in and let yourself rage, which feels good for 5 seconds, and then you're just like, oh. And I spent a lot of years going, I really wish. And it's just, but yeah, those two things. It's hard to be patient. Think about it as a gift. It's like you're forgiving someone. And that, for me at least, that takes a little of the ache away from, because you really want to put someone in their place or whatever. But, and to what Dean said about patience is not acquiescence. So I'm not saying it's perfectly fine that you cut me off and I almost wrecked my car. I'm not saying that, but I'm just going, today this is not a battle I'm gonna engage. And that pays dividends like immediately.
Yep.
If you're able to see it in that way, whether it's your blood pressure, cortisol, adrenaline, and those things can be very harmful to human bodies. So it's not even just metaphorical, it's also physical. I mean, that's why the monks, that we watch on TV, they're just like, people scream at them and they're just like, and so who's the winner? They are. And so like, I want to be that. I want to win that peace through keeping the dragon in the dungeon, or whatever metaphor for holding back anger, because it's a learned response. You can teach yourself to not, respond, and then you're just doing yourself a great big favor, and others, all beings, arguably. So.
I think what you're talking about is just what I alluded to early on. It's starting to see what the poison does to you.
Right. I'm going like, wait, why am I doing this again? Because it feels, wait, why?
So. I believe we're significantly over. Are we supposed to finish at 11:30?
Well, somewhere in that general vicinity, we don't have a.
Well, it's about 11:45 right now. So
It's a good time.
yeah. Okay. Any last comments before we chant out here? Okay, let's do that. May our intention equally penetrate every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Vert is always fast for social media.
Yeah.
But maybe a
I'll
couple
do a
more
little variety,
songs,
yeah.
because we can send them to John for the one. Yeah. That'd be cool. It's a great